The sun hit the tall glass tower, lighting up every corner of the 47th floor office where power ruled the air. Richard Blackstone, the CEO, stood at the head of a long table made of dark wood, surrounded by his nervous team. He liked moments like these, when people waited for his words, laughed at his jokes, and feared his silence. As he reached for his expensive smartphone, it slipped from his hand and hit the floor. The sharp sound of breaking glass cut through the room. The screen shattered completely. Richard bent down, looked at the damage, and smirked. $3,000 gone, he said, waving the broken phone for everyone to see. Fix this, and I'll give you my mansion. His voice dripped with sarcasm. The room filled with fake laughter. Everyone knew he wasn't serious, they just laughed because that's what people around him did. In the corner of the room stood a young boy, quiet, holding a pile of papers. David Santos. He was only 16, there to help his mother clean during her summer break. His clothes were plain, his shoes worn. Next to him, his mother, Conceição, everyone called her Conc, wiped dust from the shelves, pretending not to notice the laughter. She had worked there for 15 years, keeping her head down, taking every rude comment with a small, polite smile. But this time, her stomach tightened. The way the CEO looked at her son, like a joke waiting to happen, made her heart sink. Richard's eyes found David. "Hey, you," he said, pointing across the room. "Your mom says you're some kind of genius, right? A little Einstein?" His tone was mocking, loud enough for everyone to hear. "How about you prove it? Fix my phone, and the mansion is yours." The laughter came again, stronger this time. One of the executives looked away, uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. David didn't move right away. His dark eyes stayed calm, studying the broken phone on the table. Then, slowly, he stepped forward. His old sneakers squeaked against the marble floor, a sound that felt too loud in the silent office. He stopped in front of the CEO and looked at the phone, then at the man who owned it. "Before I start," David said clearly, his voice steady, "I just want to make sure everyone here heard your promise." The room went silent. The CEO grinned, thinking the boy was being naive. But somewhere in that silence, something shifted. Conc stopped wiping the desk. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear this time, but from a strange feeling she hadn't felt in years, hope. David picked up the broken phone with both hands, turning it slowly under the light. Tiny pieces of glass glittered on the screen, and the inside parts were exposed. Around him, the room buzzed with quiet laughter, the kind that hides cruelty behind smiles. The CEO leaned back in his chair, amused. "Careful, genius," he said, smirking. "Don't cut yourself." But David didn't respond. His face was calm, his eyes steady. It was the kind of calm that made the laughter fade just a little. He laid the phone flat on the table and studied it, his fingers moving with careful patience, like someone who'd done this 100 times before. While everyone watched, David's mind drifted to the small room he shared with his mother. He remembered sitting on the floor, fixing old radios and broken lamps for neighbors who couldn't afford new ones. He remembered his father, before he passed away, showing him how wires worked and how every problem had a pattern, you just had to stay calm long enough to see it. "Don't rush," his father used to say. "The ones who rush make mistakes. The ones who listen make things work again." His mother's voice pulled him back to the present. "David," she whispered softly from behind him, "you don't have to," but he didn't look back. He was focused. His hands, small but sure, touched the damaged circuits, tracing them with the confidence of someone who understood things most people ignored. Every tiny click and movement of his fingers made the executives exchange nervous glances. They weren't used to seeing someone so young so composed, especially not the son of the woman who cleaned their floors. As David worked, the camera of life seemed to slow down. The shine of the marble floor reflected his face, the same face that had watched his mother come home tired every night, never complaining. He had learned more from those silent evenings than any classroom could ever teach. He wasn't just trying to fix a phone. He was fighting years of people looking down on his family. The CEO sighed loudly, breaking the silence. "You've got 3 minutes, kid. Then I'm calling it a day." But David didn't flinch. His mother froze, clutching her cleaning rag tightly. She had seen that look before, when her son decided to build a working radio from a pile of scrap when he was 12. It was the same look he had now. Quiet, focused, and full of something she knew the rich man in front of him would never understand, determination born from struggle. The room grew quieter as David continued to work. The laughter that had filled the air before was gone now, replaced by the faint sounds of tools clicking and wires shifting. Every eye in the room was on him. The CEO checked his watch and smirked, pretending to be relaxed, though there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. 2 minutes left, he said, tapping his wrist. "Don't say I didn't warn you." David didn't answer. His focus was locked on the small device in front of him. He adjusted a thin cable, pressed something gently, and waited. His fingers moved with confidence, not like someone guessing, but like someone who had already seen the problem before. The executives whispered to each other, unsure if they were watching a joke or something incredible. Conc stood near the door, her hands pressed together tightly, whispering silent prayers. She remembered when her son had stayed up nights fixing a neighbor's old laptop so a little girl could do her schoolwork again. He didn't do it for money. He did it because he couldn't stand to see something broken when he knew he could help. Richard chuckled, trying to sound in control. 30 seconds, boy. Better start saying goodbye to that dream house. But as he spoke, a soft sound broke through the silence, a faint buzz, followed by a clear chime. Everyone froze. David's hands fell to his sides as the screen of the once-dead phone lit up, bright and alive. The familiar Apple logo glowed in the reflection of the glass table. The CEO's smile disappeared. His eyes widened, staring at the screen as if it were magic. "No way," he muttered under his breath. Around the table, the executives exchanged stunned looks. One of them even let out a quiet laugh, not the fake kind from before, but one of disbelief. Conc covered her mouth, her eyes wet. The phone, which had looked completely destroyed minutes ago, now looked brand new. David finally looked up. He didn't gloat, didn't say a word. He simply slid the working phone across the table to the man who had dared him. His voice was calm, almost soft. "I believe that means it's yours now," he said. The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time, the CEO didn't have a comeback. The boy he had mocked had done what no one else could. And in that quiet moment, every person in that room knew something had shifted. The power no longer belonged to the man in the suit. It was sitting right there, in the hands of a 16-year-old boy in worn shoes. Richard blinked at the phone as if he couldn't believe it. For a moment, no one moved. Then he forced a laugh, trying to sound casual. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, "it must have just needed a little battery reset. Anyone could have done that." His voice cracked slightly, but he straightened his tie, pretending nothing unusual had happened. A few of the executives looked down, not daring to agree with him. They had all seen the phone before, wires hanging out, screen smashed, battery swollen. That thing wasn't supposed to work again. David didn't argue. He just stood there, calm as ever, and said quietly, "If it was that simple, why didn't you fix it yourself?" His words hung in the air. Richard froze for a split second, caught off guard by how confident the boy sounded. Conc stood in the hallway, holding her breath. She knew that tone, it was the same one David used when he had something powerful to say. "I never said I was giving you anything," Richard snapped suddenly, trying to regain control. "That was a joke. You can't just take it seriously." His face turned red. David didn't raise his voice. Instead, he pulled out his own phone from his pocket and tapped the screen. A small sound came from it, his own voice recording, echoing through the silent room. "Fix this, and I'll give you my mansion." Followed by the laughter of everyone in the room. The CEO's face went pale. David let the phone fall quiet again. I just wanted to make sure you remember your promise, he said softly. You said it right here, in front of everyone. The room felt smaller now. None of the executives spoke. They were witnessing something they never expected, a boy with nothing but truth standing up to the man who owned everything. Richard tried to laugh it off again, but his voice trembled. That recording means nothing. It won't hold up anywhere. David's calm never broke. Maybe, he said, but it shows what kind of man keeps his word, and what kind doesn't. He paused, looking around the table before meeting the CEO's eyes. My father always says promises made in public say a lot about a person's character. The mention of his father caught Richard's attention. Your father? He asked, his voice unsure. Yes, David replied. Miguel Santos. He's a labor lawyer. He knows a lot about broken promises, especially the kind made to people who look like my mother. A quiet gasp came from one of the executives. Everyone knew that name. Miguel Santos was known for fighting cases against powerful companies. The air in the room grew heavy. Richard looked around, realizing too late that this wasn't a harmless challenge anymore. The boy he'd tried to embarrass wasn't just smart, he was prepared. David slid the CEO's phone back toward him. Don't worry, he said simply. We're not here to ruin anyone. We just wanted you to keep your word. His tone was polite, but the weight behind it made Richard's jaw tighten. He was used to being the one who had control. Days passed, but the tension from that meeting didn't fade. The story of what happened began to spread quietly through the company. Some said the CEO had been outsmarted by a maid's son. Others said he had been caught lying in front of his own team. Richard tried to act like everything was normal, but his confidence was gone. Every time he walked past the cleaning staff or saw David's mother in the hallway, he looked away. The laughter that once filled the 47th floor had turned into whispers. 2 weeks later, the company made headlines, not for business success, but for something much bigger. A lawsuit had been filed against Richard Blackstone for years of discrimination and unfair pay. The name on the papers read Miguel Santos, David's father. The same lawyer the CEO once bragged about knowing only from news stories. Inside the documents were recordings, emails, and reports, all proof that workers like David's mother had been treated unfairly for years. The truth, which Richard had buried under power and money, had finally surfaced. When the reporters arrived, Richard tried to defend himself, but no one believed his excuses anymore. Investors pulled out, employees quit, and the company he once ruled started to crumble. The man who had laughed at a poor boy now found himself trapped in a mess of his own making. Meanwhile, far from the noise of the city, David and his parents stood outside a large house, the same mansion Richard once bragged about. Only now, it had a new name on the gate, the Santos Learning Center. What used to be a symbol of pride was now a place for kids like David, who had dreams but no resources. Inside, tables were filled with second-hand computers and tools for learning. On the wall hung a photo of David's father, with a quote beneath it, "Knowledge belongs to everyone." CONC stood in the main hall, wearing a simple blouse and a proud smile. I used to clean offices like this, she said softly, but now, my son teaches here. Cameras flashed as reporters covered the opening ceremony. David stood beside her, older but still calm. When one of the journalists asked what he wanted people to learn from his story, he smiled and said, "Never mistake silence for weakness. Some people stay quiet not because they're scared, but because they're planning something smarter." Later that night, in a small apartment downtown, Richard sat alone watching the news. He saw David and his family standing in front of the mansion, surrounded by cheering students. For the first time in his life, the man who once had everything understood what it felt like to have nothing that truly mattered. On the screen, David's final words played softly, "Real power isn't about money or control. It's about doing what's right, even when no one believes you can." And as the camera faded, so did the last bit of the CEO's pride, leaving behind only the silence of regret.